The Hat of a Cowgirl, written by Rarity Belle. Apple Bloom was just trotting around Sweet Apple Acres on a warm and sunny afternoon. The little filly looked up to the warm skies only to be met by a blue, cloudless sky and the lovely rays of the suns. She wandered about without a true aim and saw her sister, who was leaning against a tree. She had taken the wise decision of taking a nap from her hard work, and her hat covered her eyes. Apple Bloom let go of a small giggle, but then as she looked to the hat, a question popped up in her innocent mind, and she mumbled to herself, "How did she got that?" The young filly walked up to the tree where her sister was lovely asleep, and as she approached, she heard the light snoring coming out of the mare. Apple Bloom couldn't resist it as she started to snuggle up against her sleeping sister. Yet, much to her own surprise, Applejack started to return the snuggle, and the filly looked into her sister's closed eyes. "Afternoon, sis," the mare said, as her eyes slowly opened, revealing the green rims. "Hey, sis," Apple Bloom replied, as she kept snuggling. Her big sister wrapped her front hooves around her, and she started to hug while snuggling. "Is there something I can help you with?" asked Applejack in her sweet-sounding voice after she had lifted up her hat just a bit to see what was going on. "Well, there is something," Apple Bloom said, and then pointed to the hat. "There." Applejack didn't fully seem to understand what the filly wanted from her. "Your hat." Applejack looked even more confused to her little sister. With a raised eyebrow, did she ask the question that was on her mind. "What was it, if I may ask?" "Well, how did you get it? I always wanted to see you with it, but I don't know how you got it," the little filly said with her big eyes. It was a look that reminded Applejack to the moment when Apple Bloom said that she wanted her key mark right then. "Well, if you really want to know, I'll tell you how I got it." The filly then snuggled a little deeper and perked her ears in order to listen to the story that was going to be told. "Well, as you know, there was a time when I left the Sweet Apple Acres to look at the world, to see other things than the acres. But as a farmer filly in the big city, everything was just so different. I just couldn't get my turn with them. No offense toward the oranges, of course. Not at all. But I just couldn't find my place in it. You want to know why me and Rarity always had a little argument, but can relate to one another?" Apple Bloom gave a slight nod in response. The mare smiled warmly as she spoke further. "Well, because of the high class of the oranges, they made me also wear those frou-frou kind of dresses and went to those kinds of parties. I had to admit, I didn't feel like myself home at all to those kind of things. But once I met Rarity and she told me how she lived, I can relate to that because I've been through the same. I shall be honest with you, I have deep respect for that mare because she is able to hold herself like that. Wouldn't be able to do it myself." "But sis, this doesn't explain nothing." "I was just coming to that part, Apple Bloom. Just let your sister tell her story as she remembers it," replied Applejack before she nuzzled her sister's little nose. "After a while, I couldn't stand all the standards anymore, and I said them goodbye. I was going to return back to the acres, back to Granny and Big Mac. The oranges luckily understood the choice I made, and I packed my things and began on the journey back to Ponyville, back to the acres." There was a small tear that began to build up below the eyes of the cowgirl while she told her story. "When I came back here, I was greeted with open hoofs and warm hearts. It truly was the happiest day of my life. The love of those two is something I'll never forget. Neither how Big Mac tackle hugged me when he knew I was back here. Applejack wiped away a small tear as she looked at her sister and started to stroke her wonderful reddish mane. I still didn't have my hat at the time when I came back. Big Mac was still wearing it. Day in, day out, he had it on his head. Oh, now that I think back about that.
Huh? Your hat was from Mac?
Applejack said in utter confusion. It was a thing she never had expected to hear. Applejack gave a simple nod to confirm the thoughts and speculation. Yes, it was from Big Mac, or as we call him at the time, Little Mac. Applejack let go of a small chuckle as she recalled the name from her brother. She leaned a little more against a tree before her mind took her on a trip down memory lane. It had been a long day. I had been working my utmost best to do all the chores that Granny gave me, and I just fell down to sleep in the field in the burning sun. It was when I woke up and walked back to the barn when I was waited up by Big Mac. There was a small moment of silence when she tried to formulate the words in her head about it all. I remember that moment after that, just so well, for I walked back to the barn, face redder than a cooked lobster. In the barn, I met Little Mac as he too was doing some chores. What he did next would change my life forever. He took off his hat and placed it on my head, saying the words, "For you, little sis, you need it more than I do." She wiped away another tear before continuing to snuggle her sister while continuing the story. I just fell down on my flanks, holding the hat tightly in my front hooves and looking at him with big eyes. Little Mac just nodded and said, "'Tis yours now." My eyes only became bigger as he said the words. A content sigh was given off by the cowgirl, before a chuckle followed up. And I didn't know what to do at the moment. Whether to hug him, say thank you, kiss him. I just didn't know. But before I could do anything, he walked away because Granny needed him for something. The mare took off her hat. She looked at it and then to her sister, who she kept hugging and snuggling. I still don't know why he gave it to me, but I never questioned it, to be honest, for it was one of the most amazing gifts I have ever gotten. I never thought I'd have a simple piece like this. She couldn't finish her sentence. Instead, she fell silent and looked a bit more to her sister. The mare then placed the hat on a little filly who looked in pure shock as she got it.
Sis?
Applejack gave her a reassuring nod and a warm smile appeared on her face, comforting the filly. A piece like this could mean so much to any pony, but it proved itself. It truly is. And that is how I got the thing that now rests on your head. Applebloom had listened in awe to the whole story and was happy she asked that question, for now she had an answer.
"'Tis an amazing story, sis."
Applejack nodded in agreement. It's a story I do not tell often, but for family, I'm always willing to tell it. The mare wrapped her other hoof back around her sister, resulting in a tight hug as the filly lowered her head against the chest of her sister and nuzzled it.
"But why did he give it to you? Any ideas?"
Applejack shook her head a little bit at the question that was asked. To this day, I don't have no idea for it, but Rarity once told me this. Stories are there to be told, but some are best left untold. And I do agree with that. Applebloom began nuzzling her sister's chest as the mare looked to the skies, the comfortable spot against a tree in the warm afternoon. All of it was just perfect. She looked back down to her sister and said, "How about a small nap before dinner, partner?" The filly nodded under the hat, and they both fell asleep under the tree for the time being. A little while later, as a big Macintosh passed them, he just looked over the side of them and let out a smile. And so it passes over, from generation to generation, he whispered to himself before walking away again. Yep.